Good morning. Welcome to the Relove Guitars workshop, and we have here today a Rally GL400, made in China, imported, well, made in China under Korean ownership, I think the company is. It's a Daiwan company of some sort. Anyway, these are great favourites of mine. Anything that Rally makes in the Les Paul shape, not everything bar one model, but almost everything it makes in the Les Paul shape, and pretty much most other shapes, including the semi-acoustic 335 shape, have been fantastic. And for me, they're by far and away the best budget Les Paul copy that you can get for your money. Now this one came in, this is coming from Martin for a setup, and it's in nice condition. Sounds great. This is what I loved originally about these guitars, was the playability was fantastic, off the peg, but also what I really like is the pickups. These are just superb. I mean, they've got so much power, clarity, tone, blah blah blah, great stuff. And if you're careful, you can find these second hand for anywhere between sort of 70 and 150 quid. You can find some of the lemon bursty ones, the GL300s, which is kind of, I don't really know the spec on this. The GL400 is a double binding gold hardware. That's about the only difference between them. Anyway, but each time I see one of these, it reminds me of how much I like them, and kind of wish I'd kept one. I played this for an hour last night, and just wonderful to play, even as is. A little bit high action. Tuning a bit unstable because of the plastic nut, pinging the strings a little bit, but just as a, oh, let's pull this down here where you can hear it. So standard stuff, and a bit out of tune. Ping there. So, sort of clean, perfectly clean tone. Out of tune down there, could be a little bit high action on the first fret for my liking, but lovely. Anyway, I won't bore myself with any more, or you. So this is from the outset, all seems to be in good order. I've played all the notes all the way up. There don't seem to be any dead notes, and I couldn't find immediately any what do you call it, choked off bends. Whether or not there are, we'll see in a minute. I'm going to lower the action down a little bit. So just I put a new holder up for the arm of magic. Now it's a little bit either side, just a different in view, but it doesn't. It's not a lot you can do with a very small shed. And what was I going to do? Oh yeah, I made an adjustment. If you hear me if you see me grimace over these next 3 hours or whatever, I'm in a very nasty scenario going on down here. Now, I'm quite aware that, just to begin with, some people will get what I'm saying and some of you won't, and I appreciate that. There are two, well, it's a bit binary actually. There seems to be some people who get this and some people who don't, and it's, I'm not saying it's good or bad either way, I'm just saying that you tend to, I guess all it means is that if you're one of the people who gets what I'm about to say, then you'll get it, and I probably, if we met up, I'd probably find we had more in common than if you're one of these people who don't get it. Now, after all that mystery, sound of a chainsaw in the background here. This has been going on for days now, and yesterday morning, some of you may have seen on these videos, occasionally I show a view of our beautiful environment that we live in, and it's we live in a modest accommodation. We don't own our own property. We're of that sort of second time around couple, you know, had houses, lost them along the way and stuff like that. So we live in rented accommodation, but we live in what Britain up till now has done really well, which is decent quality social housing with a fair landlord, i.e. the council. And you know, despite all the, I don't know, the movements away, you know, the tightening of budgets and stuff, in this country we've managed to hold on to that to some degree, and long may it last, because for people like us who don't have any assets, then it's a, you know, it's a lifeline. Anyway, that aside, the point I'm mentioning that is that our we got lucky enough that our vista, where our house, our property is that we rent, looks out onto beautiful countryside. It looks out onto farmers' fields, and those have been lined since we've been here with venerable and ancient ash trees. So, and every year we've, this is where you're either this kind of person or you're not. Every year we have been thrilled and overjoyed to watch the trees come back into bloom. It's a marker of our seasons. It's a return to kind of life and vitality in the spring, and it just feels fantastic. It's a real critical part of, well, it's just joyous, you know. Maybe it's an age thing, maybe at 25, 30 I wouldn't have noticed it or cared so much, but anyway, whatever the reason, it's really important to us and we value it hugely. But the problem is, it's not owned by us. We don't have any say. Being social renters and not landowners or whatever. So we just enjoy that fantastic view by good fortune more than anything else. Anyway, we noticed that the farmer has decided to cut down a whole load of trees, and basically I woke up yesterday morning, well, just to put it the other way, I sort of have to accept that I'm one of these people for whom the cutting down of trees is a pretty horrible thing. You know, we not only do we need them, but they are a sort of connection with, I don't know, everything essential and life-giving. So it's more than just a kind of soppy idea, it matters a lot. Anyway, on top of all the enjoyment they give us, and some of you will know that one of my favourite things in the summer is to swing under a hammock and the big ash tree on the corner, which tragically has been threatened for a few years by ash dieback, has not succumbed to that up till now. Oh, come on. This is annoying. I don't have to plug this in to tune it, but have I got anything else in tune here? Roughly. Yeah, anyway, so I woke up the other morning. It's not resonating correctly, so I can't read it. That's better. Woke up the other morning to the sound of the chainsaws, and first I thought that the farmer was doing what they're entitled to do, which is, I suppose, what you might call responsible land management, tidying up verges, edges, hedges and whatever. But instead he has a 77-year-old man with a chainsaw and a tractor, and the man is chopping down trees, pulling them down, and so all of these beautiful ash trees are being decimated. Possibly more than that. Difficult to talk about. Anyway, so that's currently going on in the background. Come with me for a little walk. So once upon a time out here we had a huge spreading ash tree, half of which now has been cut down, torn down actually, just ripped, chainsaws it and then pulls it off with the tractor, leaving a very small part of it, or a fraction of what used to be there. The majority of it's gone. There's a sycamore in front of it which is a bit straggly, but you can see the bulk of our fantastic tree, if you remember it from any other videos, is gone. And equally, he's just pulling them all down. This big one down here is going to go. All of these trees that have taken literally hundreds of years. And there's our chap up there with his little mobile home, and he's got a tractor which he uses to pull the trees down. Saws, cuts into them a bit and then just rips off the limbs, the boughs. And woke up yesterday morning to find he'd almost cut this one down, and I challenged him about it, asking him why, and I wasn't particularly polite, to be fair. But when challenged, he said, well, if you'd told me you liked it, I would have left it, because what it appears to be is the neighbours here next door didn't like the trees because they were taking their light, so the farmer, it seems, very kindly agreed to just pull the damn things down. So those are gone over there, and I think he assumed that we would like the same. So look, came along and cut that huge half of the tree off there, it's gone, and then tore off this great piece at the front. That's environmental vandalism, and there's all the crap the other side, plus the tractor that he's using to pull them down. So obviously a little bit difficult to talk about it right next to the neighbours, but I'm gutted. So, and I'm also kind of more astonished that when I challenged him about this one, there didn't seem to be any solid reason. It wasn't like the council had said it must come down because it's a threat to this house, or it must come down because it's diseased. This is one of the few ashes in the UK. There's, I suppose, a cluster of them somewhere, but it's survived, or so far hasn't become victim of the ash dieback, which is slated to, or be likely to, kill off something like 80% of our ash trees. And these are beautiful, beautiful trees, but they spread and they come out late in the summer and they overhang with their beautiful leaves. Gorgeous trees. And this one, as all of these, have survived, but now just ripping them down. It's the worst bit of vandalism I've seen, and it's heartbreaking. As you can see, okay, our garden's messy at the end of the summer, but this was our little bit of getaway. We don't have the money to go on holidays more than once every few long years, but this is where our vacations were spent. So to have somebody come in and brutalise your environment like that for no good reason, you know. It was as simple as, oh well, if you'd have told me, I wouldn't have done it, and that was it. I mean, that hurt more than, almost more than the fact that he was doing it. You know, if I'd have got out, he started at 8 AM, if I'd have got out before that, then I would have saved the whole tree and I could just kick myself. So all of that was full with these beautiful boughs of this tree. Now there's a big space. So I'm not going to go on any more about that, partly because our neighbours are involved in it, sadly, and it just doesn't do to be in earshot. But I shall get on with the setup. But if you see me grimace at the sight of the sound of the chainsaw, that's why. Excuse me. And the point I was making is that you're one of those people either, and I think somebody sent me a William Blake quote yesterday, and I thought it was very apt. It said effectively, you know, there are kind of two kinds of people. For those for whom the venerable tree is this miracle of green life and connection with nature, and then there are others for whom the tree is a green obstruction. And it seems to me it's quite right. You kind of, people seem to fall into one of those two things, and if you're somebody for whom it is just, you know, an obstruction to you getting on with whatever you know you're trying to do, then it's a real shame. Anyway, enough said. So I'm just I've put on a new nut temporarily. We're obviously going to have to cut the slots, and I'm now just looking at the action here, which is going to be a little higher because obviously that won't be dead on the first fret the way it is currently. So I'm just going to, wow, this is quite stiff. So it's interesting to find something that technically should adjust but doesn't seem to want to. Now when that's all said and done, that's not a bad action. But obviously it's going to improve a little bit. We will drop it down a tiny bit. I'm kind of interested to get the strings off and have a feel why this is so, there goes the chainsaw, why this is so stiff. Yeah, either it bothers you that somebody's tearing down healthy trees or it doesn't, and I have to say, no surprise, it bothers me a lot. Okay, there's I checked the relief yesterday. There's a very small amount of relief, which is nice. It's helped make this thing feel as fast and light as the rallies usually do. But it means that, you know, we've got to get all the frets good. These aren't bad, you know. A little bit of zingering. There's a bit more work to do on this nut slot. What I'm going to do is I'm going to backwards and forwards a bit on this one. It seems like an odd thing to do, but when you get a guitar and you put a nut on it, you have to sort of go backwards and forwards a bit. And it's that old thing I keep mentioning. You've got to keep in mind the three principal components of your playing action. Now when I say that, of course other things apply, other things are involved in how you're... Now this is really odd. These are stuck. I think we need to take these out and have a look at what's going on here first. Ooh. These don't even want to come out. Yeah, there are lots of things that affect how your guitar feels to play, and that's not what I mean by playing action, okay? So I'm quite specific what I mean when I say playing action. What I mean by that is the height of the strings at any position on the neck, basically, and the shape of the neck. That's what I mean by playing action. Now, of course, how you feel on the day affects how it affects the feel of the guitar to play. The quality of the, or the height of the frets has an impact on how it feels to play and so on, but it's not what I class as the playing action. So when I'm talking about playing action, I mean the shape of the neck and the height of, in cahoots with the height of the anchor points at both ends, right? That's what I mean by action. And that's what we take care of first, if you like, including with any fret leveling. Now, the thing that's struck me about this guitar straight away is that this bridge doesn't want to do any further downward adjustment, which is a little bit confusing because it's unusual. So the first thing I'm going to do is just hoik it off and just have a feel of these. I can see that. Oh, my new attachment on that side. So we can do this as much or as little as we like to get the action we want. So this is a little bit on the grindy side. I don't know why it's so grindy. Ew. Are we going to see any stripping of threads or something in here? Yeah, we are. That's pretty stripped. Lots of alloy dust going down. So I don't know. Oh, that doesn't want to go at all. That is pretty bad. Let me have a stronger screwdriver. This is not common to find something with this. Oh, it's uncommon, I should say, to find something as resistant to turning as this. Now I could add let's add a bit of grease to see if we can make this behave a bit more compliantly. Yeah, this has got some stripping too. Let's just let's have a look around a minute. See if anything else with a different word. See if it, yeah, standard stuff, but it's somewhere, it's stripped a little on the way in and out. And I don't know why, but we could try and help things along a little bit. Oh God, not another giant hornet, please. You can feel it grinding as it goes in. It's not happy. Well, it's like it was never meant to be. Don't know if you noticed that, Martin. But anyway, that's down to the stops now, whereas it wasn't happy to go there before. I mean, it doesn't really matter what we've got going on inside the hole, so a bit of grease is fine by me. Yeah, see, that's gone in too. Wow, amazing. Just not wanting to go in. Okay, so that helps. We can now set the action we want with more precision. I'll take all this off and clean under here anyway when the time is right. Now, sometimes what you find is that this grinding is caused because the holes are actually misplaced. And what you get, I don't know how well we can get this to look in. What you get is that basically the centre points on the bridge drag the posts in like that, and then they go in sideways. I think that's what's happened here to cause this grinding. And it's just a very small fraction of a problem. Let's see how far my little thing can go now. Yeah, not very far, but I'm trying. Da, da, da. Okay. Yeah, so what happens if they're pushed in like that, even the slightest amount, then they'll go in that way, and that will grind. Now, I have to say, a solution to this might appear drastic, but it's actually quite a good solution. If you're stuck with that and you can't easily adjust these things, there's no point thinking about moving these posts, because drilling and re-drilling is a big deal and it's going to take you ages, and actually it's very difficult to get the precision you need. The problem, the constraint, is in this hole here, and I would recommend, and what I'll probably do now, is I'm just going to slightly, if possible, just fractionally overbore that hole, because then what happens is the thing will move freely. Now, it doesn't matter Let me just look in here as well, because I've actually got, if I can get the thing open, which I can't, as always. Thanks. Disappeared down there. This is a really uncooperative thing. I've got some leftover bits and pieces which come from a bunch of things, but also will include these probably Rally parts. Gold Rally parts, and they may actually be, well, any of these might be just slightly smaller. Actually, they're pretty tight fitting. I was going to say we might get away with a slightly better fitting or looser fitting one, which saves us drilling the bridge, and these are all pretty spare. And again, they are quite ground into there, which just makes it tricky to adjust. As simple as that. We don't really need that on top of everything. So just for a little look at this, let's find these matching parts. Let's see if these not only go in, but let's see if they've got a bit more room at the top. Just might find it that one has by chance. Yeah, but if not, then we need to widen these posts. It's a funny old thing, because it's down to tenths of a millimetre, if that. Now let's just feel how this goes in. Wrong one, I'll have to use the other one for now. That's actually, yeah, you can see it's sort of riding up because it's just a bit too tight, but actually that's just about workable. Let's leave it like that. I don't mind swapping those out. They actually look nice and new as well compared to these slightly mangled ones. Let's just leave it. Done. Simple solution. Bit of grease, sorry. Yeah, so yeah, it's just one of those strange things, but it's down to, as I say, it's down to it's really hard when you're building guitars. It's surprisingly hard to get the bridge position exactly right. It's way harder than it looks. You know, unless you even, I mean, you can see even with this factory setup, these guys have struggled to do it. Now while I'm there, I've got a little bit of an issue. Can I turn you around? So yeah, it's a little bit of an issue with the nut slot at the moment, which I want to pay attention to. And while the strings are all flapping loose as they are, and with the sound of the chainsaw in my ears, as we used to say in Wales, I'm just going to try and ensure this slot is cleaned out and glue free, and so basically so that the new nut sits cleanly in there from the outset. Give it the best chance anyway. It's just sitting up in one corner at the moment, which is not what I want to have happened. Is that sitting flat? No, it's a mixture of fraction. It's either a fraction too wide and or the nut slot here needs a tiny bit of work. Yes, so little fiddly thing. So back to the playing action. The idea here is that you want to take care of your three primary components first before you do anything else. So what I'm looking to do is to set the neck relief, or check the neck relief and make sure it's where I want it to be, within sort of good range. The first fret action, which I'm kind of doing something towards right now, excuse me, and okay, the slot isn't cut perfectly straight, but I think this will have to do. It's a tad, there's a bit of a lift somewhere in the middle, so it's kind of rocking a tiny bit. Yeah, so we're gonna set the first fret action, the neck relief, and the last fret action to ensure that the basic components of the playing action are set, and then we're going to see how well it plays when those things are dialed in. And I mean, this does sit pretty well. I'm just being picky. It's not hermetically sealed, but you know what? They never are. They never are. Yeah. So the thing about taking care of both the nut, i.e. the first fret action, the neck relief with the guitar strung and fully loaded, and the first fret action, those are all the three major parts. So I'm doing those now, and of course you can see that requires some attention to the bridge, which we just looked at, which was not really responding the way I'd want it to. Some attention to the nut, I change it, and a check of the neck relief, which I have done already with this gauge of strings on. And it's pretty much fine, so I'm not going to really adjust that part. Now, you know, I've said on loads of videos, people have said, well, what's the settings for neck relief? And you know, again, there's sort of different schools of thought. Some people like to follow a manufacturer's specification precisely, and other people prefer to kind of work with what they know gives them a sort of a start point, and then work from there. Okay, I'm making a couple of adjustments just while I'm here, if I can find the right screwdriver. Yes, and quick adjust down this bridge pickup, it's quite high at the moment. Yeah, so start points for neck relief. Yes, every manufacturer would have a spec, but it's kind of much more important that you find a setting that works for you, rather than sort of dogmatically follow what a manufacturer is saying. Okay, I'm just going to raise up this bridge now, which is responding, which is great. I'm going to bring it up to a decent playing action. Yeah, so coming back to the neck relief, manufacturer will all have their starting points, and I have to say, don't get too precious. If you go to a Gibson site and it tells you a spec for a Gibson Les Paul, start with that, even though it's a vintage sorry, not vintage, a Rally, or if you had a vintage V100, just go with a standard for Les Paul. It'll work. And they usually set them on the fairly high side, but the point is, it's more important, I think, to know what the difference is when you make adjustments than it is to follow one and just stick to it and never actually experience the difference between them. So I sort of try to deliberately avoid harping on about any particular setting, because I think it's just much more important that you start with, let's say, no relief and work from there. Much better that you learn what the difference of 1/10 of a millimetre measured at the middle fret makes. It's pretty good. I've set quite a low action on here, and this is playing. This is a very low action, but there, you know, we can test it with that. You know, we can set that as a target and go and do it. Why not? Okay, bringing these up now to sort of match the front one. Now there's a little bit of adjustment on the first fret to do, but it's quite minor, which I'm pleased about. The question is right now is, would I glue this in now before I make the final adjustment? And I think I should. Now, some people get really upset about gluing in nuts, but some people also get really upset when they take the strings off and the nut flies out sideways to their surprise, so you can't really win. So, you know, the bottom line is you probably want the nut to stay where it is. If it's perfectly perfectly fitted, then for sure, you know, you can hope that it will just stay where it's kind of put, but it's very rare that you're going to get to cut or find you know, a default perfect nut slot on a guitar like this. If you do, I got a cut in the end of my finger, that is killing. If you do glue it in, you have to be very careful at this point right now and put a couple of dots of glue either side, or a dot of glue either side, stick it down. You've got to be fairly confident at this point here that when you push it back in, you're in the right place, because it's going to want to set down pretty quickly. So you have to kind of get your strings out of the way, line up your first and last one before it sets. So like I say, you've got to be quite happy and sure that it's where it is. I want a tiny bit erring on the side of the bass string here, which gives me a little lip and a little low undercut there, but that's just where I want the thing to place, and that's cool with me. So with that little bit there, I'm going to tighten. Now I'll tighten the D and the G first to put pressure on the middle of the nut so it doesn't fly off sideways, and then I'll do the B and then the A and then the low E and the high E. Okay, now obviously we're out of tune, and that bit of pulling the, this doesn't want to sit flat now, come on, get on there. It's not perfect, you see, the join, it's better on this side, but it's as good as we can get. I don't know why there's some sort of crud in the middle. I think it might even be the truss rod thing itself is holding it up in the middle, but what I care about is that it stays in one place. So let me tune it up at this point. Stay down, it's going to be fine. Yeah, it's just it's interesting that sometimes there can be, if you clean up the bit where the original sat, like for example, that's quite interesting. You see there's a blob of something on there in the original, and I think maybe they had a problem. In fact, I can see I can see where they've cut under. They've done a bit of cutting away there to make it accommodate. I haven't accommodated the thing, I've just sat it there and it seems to be doing fine. But they've actually ground away a little bit there. I should have felt that by hand to accommodate the truss rod metal. There you go. Such is the price you pay. Kind of difficult to know. You get it sat in there as good as you can get it, but it feels fine. Right, so now the first thing I'm looking at right now is the first fret action, to get that part of our process sorted out. I'll go with our usual 0.3 as a marker. And I'm going to work outwards from the D to the low notes, and it's pretty good at the moment, not far off. So hopefully we won't need too much work at all. Because these slots are pretty good as they stand. So I'm going backwards a little bit, but hopefully not too much. I might do a little bit with the old V-notch file, just to ensure that if we're cutting down, that any slot we make is opening up above the string. That's one way of being sure, pretty sure actually, of avoiding chokes. It's quite a good little low-cost method. I talk about it in my world famous ebook. But you can get down, what I recommend in that ebook is if you use this method, you can get right down to pretty much where you need to be height-wise. And you can see with your eyeballs, and you can see by pressing down, excuse me, when you got to the pretty much the gap you want, you can get right down there, and then when you're at it, if you're concerned about the sharpness of the slot, of the notch at the bottom, then just add the extra rounding out with the correct file, and in a way I'm happy with that, and that will keep your files lasting a lot longer. That's one thing. Yeah, it'll keep the files lasting longer because you're only using them for the last bit, and these things are 10 a penny. So, but each time, get a sense of the gap before you start, and cut backwards at an angle always. Yeah, we're horrifying thing is we're going away for a couple of days, visit friends, and I just dread the thought of what the skyline, hedge line is going to look like when we get back. And this person has finished their grisly work. I mean, the old guy obviously isn't, who's doing the cutting isn't the farmer, so he probably doesn't know why the farmer's doing it, and there could be any number of reasons to, from you know, preparing to turn it into one big field for some sort of livestock reason, who knows, but you know, from a citizen of the Earth's point of view, just to see perfectly healthy big trees being torn down when we, in this world, we seem to need so much. Well, you know, I don't need to go on, but you know, it seems like a really short-term destructive thing to do, and I'm not ashamed to say that it hurts to see it happen. I can't stand it. And it's quite common that some people value that extra bit of sunlight into their garden more than they value a 300-400-year-old tree. Okay, so coming up to the last bit now. What I didn't do, I was just about to go and start cutting without doing a check. Careless. Yeah, so we're moving nicely along. Like I say, these Chinese sort of jeweler's files are relatively inexpensive, so you can get one of these or a set of these to do your heavy lifting work. I mean, you know, this one's bent and a bit kind of crapped up, but actually it's more desirable than wearing down your expensive Japanese nut files whilst trying to kind of take away bulk material to get to a level, which is what I'm doing really. Anyway, yeah, so let's see where we get to. Now I always wimp out a bit because there's quite a lot of fresh air under there, and I'm always tempted to stop early, but that's me. I have found quite a simple and useful way to shim if you found some copper tape that the player was using for slug repellent, or trying to at least. It didn't work very well, but it's quite a stiff, thick tape. It's not like the stick-on stuff, but anyway, it was great for cutting thin strips, and it's very, very thin. So, but it's thicker than the stick-on tape. Actually, I like that. That's good. But it was really good for building up shims of thickness. The tape's good for that too, but it's very, very thin. So you have to put on lots of layers. But the nice thing is that they all compact together very well. So you get a really solid base, a very controllable thickness, or variable. You can really control the additional thickness you add to the shim. And you can trim it exactly the size, and it compresses down so it looks really tidy. So to me, this is, some people have said, well, why do you do this, and instead of, why don't you just sand the nut from underneath? And the answer is quite simple, that there is no way you can get to this precision by sanding from below. You will always get it wrong, unless you've got some computer controlled device. Doing it by hand, you will always be fractionally off one end or the other, and you'll just lose the precision. It's a pity, because I'd much rather not cut downwards if I could get away with it, and unless it was computer manufactured, then we mortals have to use this sort of method. But it helps to get maybe close as you can first, and then go to this method. Now, what I'm seeing here is about 0.5 and maybe a little over height by default. So I'm taking it down to 0.3, which is conservative in a sense compared to what you would get if you were playing, for example, with a capo, which actually drops you down to about, typically, 1/10 of a millimetre for an average sort of playing action at the other end. Of course, that changes fractionally if you raise or lower the last fret action or the bridge setting. But generally speaking, on most guitars, you're playing, when you put a capo on, you are playing with a very, very low action by default, and it's a good demonstration that your guitar can handle it, and actually plays and feels really great to play. And with the capo on, it's a bit like having your 0 fret nut in a way. With a capo on, the clearances between a fretted note and the next fret are set by the geometry of the guitar, or the geometry of the triangle, roughly speaking, formed by this anchor point, the bridge anchor point, and the underlying neck, and it's much better. So we're going from a first fret action here of just over 0.5, probably certainly on the B and the G, to about 0.3, and could go as low as 0.1 and it would still work, and that's kind of evidenced by how well it plays with the capo typically. But I never go that low. I'd like to sort of stop at a median, a healthy, conservative midpoint. Oh, I'll get my fingers trapped under there. Yeah, I like to stop at a nice middle point, just so that we can be sure that we've. My intention really is to do two things. It's to bring the string underneath the danger zone for the notes going sharp when you fret them down here, which is quite a common thing, and it's often described by people as not being able to get the guitar in tune. I want to bring it down below that, so under 0.5 tends to be what works, and I also want to make sure that the guitar is not only easy to play, light action, which is what you get when you lower the action at this end, and then I also want to, while I'm doing it, I want to make sure the nut slots run smoothly. And in setting the first fret action this way, I can make sure the nut slots run smoothly. So at this point I'm listening for the note tuning smoothly in linear fashion. Now with this guitar, it is surprisingly good, but I have set a challengingly low action. So, and that's a sort of as a sort of nod to Mr. Martin. I'm going to push this and make it as thingy as possible, you know, as slick as possible. We might as well. So what I will do is now get lined up to do a very gentle fret leveling, because it doesn't need a lot, this guitar, but we're going to go for that sort of extra precision bit. And then once I've done that, then I can clean out, shine the whole fretboard and frets up as part of the process of having very carefully leveled it. So I can see here that the B and the G have had to have the most work on here to get down to a nice low action with that default setting of the nut. So you know, that's kind of tells you that the nut, even if you could get it to a consistent thickness all the way from the ground up, you still wouldn't get the exact kind of radius corresponding to this guitar neck. You know, so when you take the frets as the reference point, which is what I do at both ends, then what's good, certainly on a Strat actually, at this end it's a bit given by the bridge. You sort of have to work with what the bridge is. You don't have much choice. If that's not the same radius, and it never is precisely the same radius as the neck, you're stuck with it basically. But certainly wherever possible, and certainly at this end, work with the radius of the neck as the actual radius of the frets, I should say, as the reference point, and they tell you where they need to be. So you just kind of go, if you're going 0.3 of a mil above each of the above the frets on that string, then you can't go wrong. So that's got us to roughly in tune, and I'll just stretch these out just so they stay stable during the fret leveling process. The actual tuning isn't, I keep reaching for the wrong string, what's wrong with me? The actual concert pitch tuning isn't critical here, but we do want the guitar to be close to playing tension. Okay, lovely and light. Lovely and light. It's like Bake Off. Okay, so we're just going to do this bit. We'll do this bit quite quickly, and then I'll take off for a cup of tea and come back and do the polishing out, because pretty much everything will have been sorted. So here we go with the old fret leveling game. Start with our what do you call them? What do I call them? I call them our calibration dots, points. And the aim of this is to use these 3 dots to calibrate or deform or set this truss rod to map or mirror or basically set it the same as the curve in the neck of the guitar. Now this is, what I'm feeling about this is that this is pretty flat, so I'm kind of just about on the mark there, maybe a little bit tiny more, but it's almost as flat as this truss rod will go. So it's a very, very flat neck we've set on this, or that it came with, and I'm sticking with because I want to sort of challenge it. Now this method of fret leveling, by the way, doesn't care if the neck was shaped like a banana, because you just adjust the truss rod to map that and you do the leveling that way. And in a way, as far as the relative levelness of the frets one to another, they don't care. The curvature, as long as the tool matches the same curvature, the frets underneath don't give a hoot. They just do what they do. The relative levelness is still there when you achieve it. So what I'm looking at here is pretty even. There's a couple of low spots here and here, but not so much as should make no problem. And I really don't need to do much leveling on this at all. This is mostly fine tuning, tiny bit there. I'm talking about 1mm action here on the high E, which is SG territory. But the reason I've pushed it that hard is because I know that rallies can do it. For some reason they are such level necks, they're really capable of low actions. I've had some astonishingly low playing actions. Now we're almost all there. There's one low fret, two low frets on this whole guitar really standing out, and those will make notes here and here a little bit potentially iffy, but tiny little bit at the end. I'm being really hyper picky at the moment, and I'm going to lean on this last fret now. So just almost like a little bit more focus on it. Just even looking at it, like people, you know, talk about when they you know, what is it, sailing or, you know, skateboarding. They look in a certain direction and the thing goes that way. Okay. Yep, that's good. Right, so I'm going to use the same excuse me, same setting for the second track, which is what I always do, because it's the same calibration basically where I just was, so it won't be that much different. There we go. Again, just highlighting slightly, a couple of low spots there, but marginal. Good. I'll now recalibrate for the G track. It's a very difficult situation when you know that your neighbours have initiated because they don't like trees. Actually, it turns out that our neighbour is sort of paranoid, has morbid worries about tree blowing over and killing them while they sleep, and she's kind of, sounds like she's communicated this to the farmer, and he's probably, you know, the goodness of his heart or whatever, he's said, okay, I'll move the tree. Well, I guess he was having other things done, but it just seems quite destructive for what is unwarranted, I'm afraid, worry. See, that's a great quality neck. They just, I mean, it's a 12-inch radius, fair enough, so it's a lot easier than most of these 9.5s that try to do the same sort of low action on, and it just always will be better because the geometry is more tolerant. But you know, I've had Epiphones and quality, even Gibsons sometimes, that will not level up and play at this low action, and this is great quality, this Rally. Love it. Yeah, so anyway, what I was saying is it's pretty difficult when you know your neighbour has initiated this process of destruction. I barely know what to say, if anything. It wouldn't be pleasant. So yeah, that's the price you pay for being in social housing and living with, well, little choice over who you live with in close proximity. It's just one of the things that goes with the territory. Anyway. So these lower two note strings were a little bit more needing of work than the others, but again that's often because the combination of the amount that the string has to move. The bigger strings tend to swing further, but this was pretty good. I mean, we're down at 1.2 millimeters ish on the last fret on the low E, which is pretty low for a Les Paul. But I'll give it one more quick go with this and the E on the A, I should say, and then I'll go down to the E. Let's just calibrate, come on, go with it. I'm busy thinking of chainsaws and trees and acts of villainy and vandalism, I'm afraid. Okay, so we're nearly done. I'm rolling these off just to make sure. It's always quite tricky on the edges because the string plays pretty close to the edge, and the tendency, or there's often a tendency that not only does the fret stick up at the edge, pretty good, but it can be that when you're leveling you can miss the edge too, because you don't want to roll it too far. But anyway, that's done and it's playing superbly. Plastic nut will go in the bin, or close to the bin, somewhere near the bin, and then I'll just remove the strings. So we're kind of set to go now. I'll give it a clean up, clean up and clean down. We'll put these strings off and, yeah, that's busted. We'll take these strings off and throw them away. I'll just check the gauge. I'm pretty sure they feel like 9s to me, but it could be wrong. Bet you I will be wrong. I think I'm very wrong. Yeah. And they're 10s. Okay. Write that down so I remember. Okay. So just get these off, clean up. And then of course, before I break, I will just do the re-profiling of the frets. I should get some denture paste or something. I'm just thinking, ooh, this is nicely self-locking. How do you achieve that? Yeah, wouldn't it be, Mike was a bloke on the range, customer of mine, who I'm making the. Oh, why no? Why did you do this? I hate this. Martin, you didn't. You tied your strings on, and it makes it bleeding impossible for bleeding people like me to do anything with. I'm going to cut this here and try and unpick it afterwards. But anyway, yeah, Mike, customer for my MG #1 production model, which is looking nice over there. Mike has talked to me about a substance or a material called rifle bedding compound, because he saw me doing a sort of resin neck pocket fix at some point, and he suggested this rifle bedding compound, and it just made perfect sense. So when you make the metal parts of a rifle, and they're precision made kind of pieces, and then obviously you have to seat them into a wooden body, hand carved or whatever, wooden body, and it's actually quite a difficult thing to do to get it to sit precisely. So apparently in the world of rifles they have a substance called rifle bedding compound, which is a sort of putty resin 2-pack probably, or something that goes off, and basically you put some of that in before you lay the metal parts in, and then you seat the metal parts onto that bedding compound and sort of press them, squeeze them into whatever correct alignment that you want. That seems like a really clever idea. So something like that would go well. A white paste like that would go really well for the nut, just to fill in any tiny little gaps that do look untidy. Even though I know the thing is seated solidly, I would much prefer a sort of little bit of filler, and I could do it with I've got plenty of black coloured resins, but that would be a bit on the mucky side, and it's always cream or white needed at this end. But a little, I might just have to have a look at that, a white bedding compound. Probably even find one that simple, but hey. Okay, so next thing to do once you've fret leveled, and I call these medium jumbos, is to reprofile the fret. So it's just taking off the any shoulders on the fret, so that it's rounded and arch shaped. Now I can tell that there's a bit more to do on this edge because I worked a little harder on the bass notes than I did on the other side, and some a little bit more than the others, although actually they look like these are earlier fret levelings. I have the suspicion that Rally does it in the factory, and I suspect, like many and increasing numbers of manufacturers, I suspect they do it with a radius block because it's quick and it's effective. But sometimes I think in that process quite a lot of the companies or the manufacturers I've seen doing that, while it's great they do that with the radius block, it seems also quite common that they don't re-profile them, which is funny given that it really is only a minute of extra time or two if you have a tool like this StewMac crowning file, they call it. But hey, maybe a machine can do the other bit, and maybe this requires a human, and that requires money, and so on and so on. And you have to be careful here not to run off the fretboard and clunk onto the finish. can happen like that, because you are applying some downward pressure at the same time as rushing backwards and forwards. Now some people at this sort of stage go, yeah, what about fall off or fall away or whatever it's called? And you'll notice with this method I don't seem to have to worry about it. And that's all I can tell you, is that, and I've some boring unscientific theories as to why it is, hypotheses, but I won't go into those. But all I can say is that it just doesn't seem to be something that needs to happen when I use this method of fret leveling. So that's that. Now technically I could take off a bit of the height off the nut here. I'll probably choose to do that with a file. I have often done it with a Dremel. Occasionally found that Dremel bites chunks off, which I'm not so happy with. And at least with a file I can really take it slow and see what I'm doing, control it. But of course you have to be confident you're in control of the file and where it goes to and where it stops. And also, you know, being confident you can keep the file away from the frets while you're using it. That's sort of critical. And you've got to also not end up taking off so much that the strings jump out of the slots, and then you've got to be able to confidently go around the corner like this, otherwise you end up with a sharp edge. So it's just a matter of controlling it, really. So my knuckle here is protecting it, so I know it isn't going to scrape on the frets, and I've got my fingers either end to stop it running off, which also could lead to it impacting the frets. So I've got an angle and I've got it controlled, and that's the main thing if you're doing this. Okay, that'll do me. That's taken off just a bit of the excess and it's still kept looking tidy. Next stage now is to mask off the fingerboard, which I'll just show you briefly how I do it. It's not science of rocket making. And then once it's all masked off, then to polish out the frets with various grades of sandpaper and micro mesh, the usual long-winded way I do it. You know, other people try out different methods to save time. And that's cool. I like to stick to the method I know brings consistent results. So anyway, we whiz through with this. Get this. I'll obviously cut a load of strips next and fit them because they need different size bits of paper, and that's time consuming, but it's cheaper than buying custom made tape. I get my rolls of tape for about £1 from the local market, low tack, and I can afford to be liberal with it, which means I can, you know, lash it all over the paintwork if I want to make sure I'm protecting that, because I'm not worried about the cost particularly. It's all going to a good purpose. Anyhow, right, so I'll just hang this up for a minute while I get on and cut those strips, and I'll see you when all that sanding process is done and we're ready to fit new strings. Okay, oh hang on, move the phone out of the way. Right, a couple of things. So I've taken the tuners off this guitar because if I get the opportunity, I do like to do a clean-up, and I wanted to do a quick polish of this guitar on its surface because it's a beaut and it deserves to look the best it can. So I'm going to do a little bit of scratch removal, polishing, and a great way of getting it looking really tidy is to take the tuners off, and then you can get a sort of full access to the whole, the whole headstock. And you can see it's pretty mucky as headstocks get because this thing's sticking up, but with that off we can give it a nice good clean up. And I'm just going to try tightening up these. That hurt my arm more than it hurt that. Tightening up these strap buttons, and they seem to be okay. They're a little bit loose, but it's mainly from neglect more than, it's not permanent looseness. I don't need to fill it with anything, so that's good. Yeah, so just as a quick thing, so I can get my fingers a bit damaged, so I have to be careful. Use the other ones. Can you see? You can see. So yeah, just for the taking off of the headstock, sorry, the tuners, it means I can get everywhere in here with this finish scratch remover stuff, which is really effective. It's expensive. It's the Eterna Shine stuff, but it don't half make a difference, and it's a really nice refresh for a guitar like this. Now these tuners also happen to be pretty mucky. They've got all the sort of all the standard cleaning, buffing stuff that gets into the holes during the factory production is there, so they're completely kind of mucked up. But it doesn't mean it has to look untidy on top. That's just sort of usage gunge that builds up. So there we have a nice freshly cleaned up front of the headstock, and we can do the same on the back, and then we can replace the tuners. And I'm using a sort of a relatively dirty cloth, relatively speaking, to apply the polishing stuff, and then I can go over it with a nice, much cleaner cloth. And don't need much, that's the great thing about this stuff, but you just need enough to give it a refresh. And it is a bit like, but better than tea cutting your car. This stuff is really gentle but effective, and although it's incredibly expensive, I haven't found anything that works as well for that very quick bring your guitar back to life, especially when you come to black lacquer or black poly like this. It's really, you know, it's really hard to get looking clean because it picks up dust and smudges really easily. So that's the neck and the headstock. So again, clean it off with a cleaner rag. But that's, you know, that's a nice refreshed look. So then we can, which way up are we now? This way up. So again, we can get the mucky cloth, and as we put each tuner on, we can just try and take off the bulk of the gunge. Yep. And just hopefully, without mucking up the finish too much, I just want to get that on, and then we'll go around the other side and do it up. But I mean, you know, this, you're always going to get the cavities full of this buffing compound. It's sort of, there's no real avoiding it. And of course, as long as it's in the hole and doesn't go anywhere else, then there's no real issue. So, just to, you know, you think to yourself, well, how long extra has this cost me? Well, maximum 10 minutes to do this bit. And what do you get? You get a very fresh looking, rejuvenated headstock out of it, which looks the biz, you know. And it's, for me, it's paying attention to those sorts of things that you can do along the way and not charging extra for them. You know, why not? So I'll just now put these little screws back on, set it to stun. So to my surprise, a set of new lacquer arrived, which means that I can add some more layers to Mike's MG1 SG copy style guitar, which is hanging up in here. But that's excellent because it means I can leave that, what are you calling it? I don't know the word. Setting, no, you know, curing over the weekend, and I don't need to touch it. And then by Monday it'll be ready to move on a stage, which includes aligning and fitting the bridge, the stop piece, tail piece, which is exciting progress. Okay, this is. I wish I had something that worked a bit better, quicker for this, but funnily enough, I don't. So I end up always doing it by adjustable spanner and slowly. Holy cow. Anyway, so what you can see is that we've got the frets all polished off, reprofiled, polished to a playing finish now, ready to go. We need to oil the fingerboard. Oh, I'm going to first of all do a little scratch remover, go around on the front and the back, and then polish, then oil the fingerboard and then restring. And pretty much the sort of precision stuff is always done by this time, so it's a nice process of taking care of the more cosmetic things, little fiddly things that it can improve on. There you go, freshened up. Okay, so I'm going to flip over and go on the back of this first. Again, even a fingerprint on this mucks it up. So a couple of tiny bits of this. Again, it costs a fortune, but does the job. And like I say, you really hardly need any of it. Could probably get away with the second grade there's a kit with two grades of, I suppose, abrasiveness. The second one is milder again, gentler, but they both do, for this purpose, do a very good job of refreshing the bodywork. It just takes off a sort of very, very surface layer of grime without doing any dulling of the paintwork at all. In fact, it increases the shine of it, which is great. And then you can sort of flip over and use the same stuff on the cloth to do the edges as well. Get up there around the strap buttons, which are grubby. Flip it over, do the other side. There's a bit of tape adhesive from where I masked off the neck, and that's gone now with this. And then into that carveway. Okay, so that's just the basic refresh. If I was faced with you know, more significant scratching on the guitar, then I can take it to the buffer, but that's obviously a bigger process because it involves taking all the equipment off. There's a bit of buckle rash here. It's part of the guitar, I guess. Nothing we can really do about that now. Right, so that's that, and now for the front. Again, this is a little bit more difficult because you can't get everywhere with this. Come on, because you got knobs and pots and stuff sort of get in the way, but you can get a good going at it up to the, you know, pickups and around the edges and stuff. And it also just takes some of the caked on gunge off the pickup covers as you run up against them. It's hurting the finger that's cut, unsurprisingly. Again, around the, is that loose? Yeah, there's a little bit. I just have to put a spannery thing, adjustable thing on there. And so this isn't perfect. Without taking the entire hardware out, you can't get to everything when you're polishing on the top like this. We can get some fair way into it. And it doesn't matter at this stage if we lose the setting on the bridge or anything, because it's gonna, the nice thing about this setup is that it's done in such a way that even if we took all these components off, we can just put it together again, dial in a low action, and we know it's going to play well down to 1 millimeter on the bass side, and well, about 1.25 millimeters on the bass side, and about 1 on the treble side. So we just know that we can go there with this, which is great. That's what the setup does for you. Okay, so that's a bit of a cursory job, but it's better than nothing. I've said think, it's not pronounced like that, I know. Okay. And you know, with a black black poly guitar finish, every single time you look at it, you'll get a fingerprint or an imprint on it. There is just no way of keeping it clean for more than 10 seconds on the trot. And as you can see, getting in and out of posts and bushes and knobs and stuff is just fiddly, and you can only get a certain amount of the way there, but it hopefully improves it somewhat. Say so, but it is always so much more satisfying to get all the hardware off and give it a sort of once over in the buffer. But again, it's funny because even from that moment, the minute you're attaching things again, you're on the losing battle. It just never stays this pristine. No surprise, you know, it's there to be used. Okay, so there's my re-cleaned beauty. Oh, there's a couple of little things here. We've got some hardware which is just a little tired, and again, it's this gold stuff isn't something you can really want to shine up, because you can very quickly rub off the gold anyway if you're too aggressive with it. So I tend to just use the same cloth as I did the surface with, and just kind of use the mild abrasiveness of that to polish it out a little bit. So that's a lot handsomer looking. Oh look, there's dust already on the top. And then the bridge, again, it is a bit on the filthy side. What we can do with that, if you're in the mood, you can get your Coleman's cooking fluid stuff, get a bit of tissue or two, and give it, clean its teeth, and that will get rid of some of the grime, and you can usually just about get in between, but there's a lot of build up of grease on here, quite stubborn stains. And it's never going to be brand spanking new again, and you don't want it to be, but you can improve it a little bit. It's difficult to do without completely dismantling, but if you know me and tune-o-matic bridges, you can see the grime that's come off there. Look at that, proper mucky. Back in there. in there. So this will be just a bit nicer than before, but you can still see that you'd have to work quite hard to get rid of all of that grime. Try and get a fair bit of it out there, but it's the getting in between the bits that's nigh on impossible. And even with the thumbnail it's very tricky. Well, just about getting there. Yeah, that'll do. It's an improvement. I've become very precious about dust now. Get off. Right, so that's that. Now we go for our new, no, we're not new strings yet. We are oil the fingerboard. Now, part of this process of oiling the fingerboard also removes any residual marker pen on the sides of the frets, usually anyway. Oh, that went all everywhere. Yeah. So it brings the rosewood out to a nice colour, and it, as I say, lets me just wipe off any marker pen that's still edging the frets, because obviously the pen sometimes goes over and touches the sides, which the subsequent sanding doesn't remove. So nice to get both sides of the frets here. At the same time as sort of darkening the fingerboard. Look at you, look at that slime. No offence there, Martin, I mean just general slime. Same kind of slime that we all have on our finger boards. It's amazing how much grime comes off, including marker pen, but it's not just marker pen, that's the thing. Ow, that hurts. Oh, if Aaron, or Aaron, depending how you pronounce your name, if Aaron's watching, I'd like to say hello to Clara and to Porik. Apparently two young Real Love Guitars friends, and this time I am talking to you, Clara, so although it's not live, I'm saying hello to you. And I hear that you sometimes watch what I'm doing with your dad, which is amazing attention span for a small child, so well done. You get a special medal for putting up with me. Grown-ups can choose to do it, but if children can watch something as fiddly as this for as long as this, then who knows what you can do in the future. Grow up to be a great scientist or artist or something like that. Whichever you want to be. Okay. So hello to Clara and her brother Porik. They're like Gus Honeybun, and any of you people who lived in the West Country of the UK will remember there was a TV kind of filler thing in between the TV shows when they were just wasting filling time. They had a strange stuffed character called Gus Honeybun down our way anyway, in the West Country, and it was a strange puppety thing, and I don't know, was it just filling time? Maybe they had to kind of, I don't know, put some more logs on the steam powered television fire or something, but they obviously needed to fill some time, so that they bring out Gus Honeybun, and he would read happy birthday wishes to all the children in the region. Yeah, he's still around somewhere apparently. Of course it's a he. He lives somewhere, maybe a museum or something. I think I saw him. You can probably find him on the internet. But yeah, Gus Honeybun, a sort of rabbity thing. I'm not sure he ever wished me a happy birthday though, so I think I'm a bit traumatised by that. Maybe he did, maybe I'm just ungrateful and I don't remember. Who knows? Anyway, so here we are in the fun part of replacing or restringing new strings. A set of 10s going on here, roto sound. People get, goes without saying, every subject to do with the guitar gets people all aerated. One of the things people swear by one kind of string or another, and I found these to be okay, no problem. They're affordable. They're quite clever. They suckered me in by offering a free extra string in their individual packs, and of course I tend to buy mostly triple packs where you don't get that free string, you just get yet another crappy strap that you end up throwing in the bin. But anyway, I've carried on using them. They're workable and decent quality. Nothing wrong with them. But if you want to pay 15 quid for your elixirs, then of course you can. It's always an individual choice. I think what's put me off buying elixirs, I have to say, is the fact that I've had too many fake ones already, and that's not elixir's fault. It's as much comes with the turf of eBay, really. There's too many people selling too many fake things, and the trouble is with something like a set of guitar strings, as Toman and people like that prove, they don't really cost that much to make, because Toman sells them for a quid a pack. Something like Rotor Sound and Ernie Balls are about £5 a set, and elixirs are something like 15, or anywhere up to £15 a set. So if you're manufacturing them in China somewhere, let's say, for about less than £1 a set, then it's worth it to be knocking them out under some fake packaging, fake branding, and calling them elixirs, because you're getting 15 quid a set somewhere along the line. So it's actually pretty profitable in percentage terms. It's probably better than smuggling drugs. Not that I have any idea about what the percentages involved are, the margins in drug smuggling, before you ask. But 15,000%, or I can't even. 1,500 or 1,500%. You tell me, whatever it is. If you're getting them for a quid and you're selling them for 15, that's a big markup. Anyway, so that's pretty much stopped me buying, or made me very nervous of buying elixirs from almost anywhere other than a music store, or possibly some reputable sellers on Amazon. But even then, how do I know really that what they've got are genuine? And I've had a couple from Amazon, from eBay, which were ostensibly reputable sellers. I don't think they knew what they had, and what they kept doing is every time I kind of complained, they'd very graciously, as a good seller would, they'd send me a new pack, as if the one I got was a one-off. But of course it wasn't. The next pack would have black rusty bits on them, and just feel completely wrong. So it's a tricky area, and it's obviously probably going to be costing Elixir a lot of money, or some money that they could do without losing. Anyway, who knows whether they're aware of it or do anything about it. I'm not even sure they are. But if it's worth counterfeiting, then it's worth counterfeiting, and so they will do it. Okay. So there we are. I've seen the sun coming out, and mercifully today there's no sound any longer the doors decided to close to protect me probably from views of the outside world. But at the moment it's gone quiet on the chainsaw front, so maybe Mr. 77-year-old chainsaw wielding tree psychopath has knocked off for the weekend, giving the glorious trees a brief stay of execution. Having said that, I think I'm just hearing his van come back into the field. That would be too easy, wouldn't it? Yeah, I'm too optimistic, aren't I? Repulsive people. Right, okay, so what I'm going to do, I'm just going to put a bit of loading on this. Check everything's attached to the right places down there, and then before I go any further, I'm just going to reset the action to where I want, because it's moved a little bit. It's nice that it moves now. That's very good. 1.2-ish. There's nothing. Okay. Okay, so I'm going to just do a little stretch now. So new strings will get a stretch going. I have to use the fingers that aren't cut. I'm trying to do that, of course, whilst keeping the fingers off shiny pickups. Difficult. So this is a really important part of the process. It's so tempting always to skimp on, and this will not only, if you get it right, this will go most of the way along with your nut slots being cut right. This last bit here, the stretching out of slack, will go the other. If the nut slots are 50% of your tuning stability, this bit's the other 50%, and it's so tempting to skimp on it because you want to get off and play or rehearse or whatever it is. So totally recommend you take the time to get this right. Okay, now what I'm going to do just now is I'm going to put the cover back on. Now I think this cover still has its original plastic on, which dulls it, so I'm going to take the liberty of removing it, because in my world it's like having a car seat and keeping the plastic on it. It's just no point. Everything's going to wear out eventually, but you might as well have shiny and nice at least one point in your life, and this is that point. Ta-da! So I've just to kind of top off the lovely tidied up headstock, polished up headstock, I've now taken out the plastic, and there's a bit sticking out there which is annoying me. Come on. Come on. Oh really? Thank you. Right. So yeah, so the key thing to remember is tuning stability is more or less half the condition of your nut slots. That will, the tiniest of tightness or gripping or extra friction in your nut slots will rob you of tuning stability. The other 50% of it comes down to the slack in your strings, and of course those two things together will conspire to mess up. But the tight or ill cut nut slots will mess up your tuning whether you've got slack in your strings or not. But add to it slack in your strings, and those things together will play merry hell with your tuning. So having taken a lot of care at the beginning to get the nut slots right, i.e. replacing plastic with bone, cutting it very carefully to get the right first fret action and making sure at every stage of the way that I'm not hearing any pings, nothing's tight, and the tuning is linear and smooth. Then this is the next important bit, which is hand wringing out the slack. So that detuning there didn't occur because the tuner's turned backwards. All of that detuning occurred because there was residual slack in the strings waiting to come out, and I forced it out by hand, and therefore it detuned. Now what I'm doing deliberately here, if you don't do it deliberately here, it will do it while you're playing. It'll do it more if you have a tremolo, it'll do it a little bit if you bend notes, and it will do it a tiny bit if you just strum the guitar. And you would be amazed the amount that it's taken me to stretch out like this over 3 deliberate stretchings. That amount of detuning you've just heard could take years to come out on its own with your normal playing or use of a tremolo or whatever, or bending. Okay, now we're getting close. That's a monstrously low action. It might even be too low for some people, we shall see. But of course you can always go upwards if it is. But we'll start with it there and see how it feels. But it is unusually low, so it's much lower than I would normally go, or quite a bit lower than I would normally go with most guitars of this type. Oh, I say quite a bit, I mean we're talking fractions of, or bits of millimeters here, but now I'm going to do a couple more little bends here, sort of direct stretches. I'm trying not to stress over the ankle points here. Of course I usually keep some spares, but I'm out of spares, so I really don't want to break any strings because that costs me another pack basically. Okay, so still a little bit more coming out. That's on. Now here you're listening and feeling for linear, smooth tuning. Now I've got a king size hornet that's come back in here. It's very nice and linear and smooth. Done. I think I better pay attention to that monstrous creature. I'll show you now. Hello friend, you are huge, and you're the one I captured yesterday, aren't you? You really want to make a home in here. But it's not what I want most, for you or for me. So I'm going to have to try and catch him again. I think we've been through this process twice already in this shed. I don't want you. I really don't want you. No, 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 no. Come on. Out you go. Right. Bloody hell. He's going to land on me. I know that's all he wants to do. Go away. Go away. Go away. I don't want to kill him. I don't kill things, you'll notice. But I would prefer that he was not in this neighbourhood. Oh, he's fallen into a spider's web, but he's too big for that. He doesn't need to worry about that. So I'm going to help him out. Well, sort of. Hold on. Thank you. So now I just need a bit of transparent stuff. Maybe this will be better. Hold on. Don't need transparent at all. I just need something to go over the top. Thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you, thank you. There we go. Say hello. He's big, isn't he? Look at my finger by comparison. You can't see that. My thumb by comparison. You wouldn't want that thing chomping on you. Okay, that was fun. This is lovely. It's just made me want another one of these. It's just such a great Rally. Take my word for it. Worth having. But not all of them. They're not all the same. But there is something particularly good about their Les Paul copies. So if you see a Rally GL300 or GL450, which is the black one with the gold fittings and the double binding, they all come without pick guard, and usually I think they all come without a little thing around there. It reminds me I must do that thing up. But if you see a Rally GL450 or 300, grab it. Don't pay more than 175, and even if it's beautiful. But you can find them between 70 and 150 fairly easily, because people don't really know how good they are. So I recommend you grab one, because this has made me want one all over again. Oh, that was supposed to switch off. Very good. Oh, don't tell me the buttons can't. 3, 2, 1. Ready? 3, 2, 1. Off. Having been somewhat distracted by the Hornet, I've forgotten two things. Well, forgotten one thing: intonation. So I'm just going to do that. But first, I'm just going to pay a quick respect to this switch that's attempted to move. So it's a very crude way of doing things, unfortunately. So I'm going to hold on to the switch with my hands, and I'm going to, I would like to hold on to the switch. It's already swiveled round. Yeah, so the switch is, it's kind of pointing front and back, so I can move it. There you go. So I should probably have a tool for this, because it seems to happen so often. So we get this into a sort of vertical position, and what we really need is a tool, that a semicircular block of wood that sits in there and props this thing and stops it from moving. I wonder if I've got any little thing that might just do. Just want to sit in there. Do you know what? I'm just going to make a tool. Watch this. Stay there for a minute. I think I'm going to make a tool. Just pile that there. Let's move this out of the way. Oh God, let's move this out of the way. You just bear with me a minute. It's going to get very noisy all of a sudden. But there'll be a reason for it. And it will make sense. Very nearly. Sorry about that, but I thought you'd like to see innovation in action. So a slightly curved block, followed by a slightly not very curved. Now this is really difficult to do. You basically have to get this thing to grip and to do up without touching the lacquer. And I, for one, find it mighty difficult to do because you're doing a mixture of gripping and turning at the same time. Cool! I'm going to reuse that. Oh, hello! Guess who? Welcome back. I know you haven't been away for long. You coming up to say hello? Mozzie. Mozzie? Oh, I know. Frickin' chainsaw started again. How disgusting. He hates it too. It's upsetting him as much as it is me, bless him. It's his environment too, isn't it, Morris? I would almost go as far as to say it's your birthright, Morris, but it's a bit soppy. I wish. But it's not worth going to prison for, is it? No, I don't need to use that. I'm just going to use the tuner. It makes things easier. Okay. Mauricio. I'm going to do that there, and I'm going to put that there. Hello, Morris. How are you doing, my friend? He's got a collar on that you didn't have before because his microchip appears to have moved, and so him and his sister couldn't get in or stop. But it works for the tags, so he's got a tag on and a bell, and he hated me for it for about 10 seconds yesterday. And he's such a sweet kid, he didn't really mind after that. Okay. That's on. As I suspected, pretty much in. Yeah, the G's a bit sharp, that's true, that's all I can see is the G needs to go back a bit. And you can see it's visually seeable, it's visible. Anyway, yeah, it's you can see from here that the pattern's disrupted in the G department. Anyway, much as I adore tunematic bridges and all they stand for, I shall now minister it with some love and attention. Oh, God, it's so beautifully engineered. It's so what's the word? Yeah, all these three are somewhat sharp. Okay, Morris. I'm going to push them all back a bit. Counterclockwise, Sam. Counterclockwise, okay. That's there we go. Push these two back and double check. Counterclockwise, remember? Yes, sir. Counterclockwise we will go. I wish this man would go away. horrible, destructive people. It's not like we need trees in this planet or anything, is it? I mean, not that they do anything for us. I hear the man's tractor running. I know one of two things. He's either about to rip a bough off a tree, or he's oh god, here comes my friend the hornet again. He's either about to rip a bough off a tree, or he's dragging a dismembered bough across the field behind him, like some great white warrior. Right, there we are, all done. Thank you for sticking around for that extra bit. Now I shall go in and take a break and polish this up one more time, hang it up, and it'll be ready to go out. Pretty quick turnaround.